What is up, everybody? Jack here with devslopes.com. Welcome back to our API course. And today we're going to be going over JavaScript functions. Functions are a big part of JavaScript, and we're going to talk about what they are and some different caveats with them and how to use them. So I've got my functions.javascript file open here, .js, and I've got NodeMon running over here with this file loaded up in it. So just a little bit of background. If you come from another language, you probably already know what functions are. If not, basically functions they let you group a series of statements together to perform some task. Once a function is created, it can be used over and over in your code. So if you find yourself repeating statements in your code, it may be a function is the right answer for that situation. One of the core tenets of programming is the DRY principle. And DRY just stands for don't repeat yourself. So if you find yourself doing some block of code over and over and typing it over and over, you may want to pull that out and put it into a function and make it reusable. Now, functions in JavaScript are first-class objects. They can have properties and methods just like any other object. Where they differ is in the fact that functions can be called and objects can't. So let's go ahead and dive into some examples here. So first, we're just going to create a named function. And in JavaScript, we use the function keyword. And then we put a block. We've got our function keyword, and then the name of the function, and then we've got our call here. Now, if we have parameters, we put parameters in between these parentheses here. And then we go ahead and open our curly braces, and then we end our curly braces here. Now, with functions, we don't have to have a semicolon at the end. But inside that block, we add whatever statements or functionality that we're looking for. So in this case, we'll just say console.log, well, hello there. Now then, to run this or to execute this function, all we've got to do is just type the name of the function and then the open and close parentheses and a semicolon. If I save it, you see here in NodeMon prints out, well, hello there. So that's how a function works. You declare the function, you put your statements in here, and then you call it just like this right here, and it executes those statements that are in there. Now this is a named function. Let's go ahead and take a look at a function with parameters. So we'll call this one, say hi with parameter. And then inside here, we're going to pass in a name. Now name is just a variable. And it can be whatever you pass in. But basically, we'll use name inside this function block here to as the variable to print out whatever it is we want to. So here we're going to say console.log, and we're going to use our template strings here. So we'll say, well, hello there, and then our template, our $ curly braces, and we'll pass in the name. We'll close this off. To call this, we'll say hi with parameter, and then inside the parentheses, we're going to pass in a name. So here, I'm just going to pass in Joe. If I save it, you see over here, we get this first one prints out, just say hi, and then the second one prints out, well, hello there, Joe. Now then, one thing about functions, named functions anyway, is these, when JavaScript, when the interpreter runs, it goes through and looks at all your code. These functions are hoisted to the top of the code. So you can actually call a function before you declare it, a named function anyway. So if I just say copy this, and we post it up here at the top of the file, and actually, let's go ahead and copy this one as well. And then comment these two out. Now, if I say that, you see we still get the output we're expected. And the reason being is that these two functions, when the interpreter runs, it hoists these functions to the top, so they're available when we get to this point. Now, there's some other situations, like with an anonymous function or something, where the function is not hoisted to the top. And we'll take a look at those here in just a second. So let's go on with some more examples. So we could say function add three numbers. We could pass in A, B, and C. And instead of doing a console log or something, there's something in functions called a return statement. So we can say return A plus B plus C. And what this return statement does is it evaluates this expression here. So whatever three numbers we passed in, it's going to add them together. And then this return statement is going to return that value to the calling, well, we'll assign it to a variable, but it's going to return it to the call. So we can say let result equals add three numbers, and we can pass in, say, 10, 20, and 30. And then we can say console.log result. If we save it, you see right here, we get the result 60. So what happened here is we called add three numbers, and we passed in the values 10, 20, and 30. 10, 20, and 30 are stored in these variables right here, A, B, and C. And then we created this expression and then returned it. Now we could also, if we didn't want to return it, we could say console.log A plus B plus C, and then get rid of that variable assignment there, and get rid of the console log and save it, and we still get 60. So instead of returning the value here, we just console logged it. You can do it either way. A lot of times you're going to be dealing with return statements. So let's take a look at another example here. Let's just say function, say hello, and we're going to pass in a first name and a last name. All right, and then we're going to return, a template string. So this function here, we're taking in two strings. Well, they could be anything, but we're going to pass in two strings here. And then we're going to return this template string here. So when we call it, we can say let greeting equals say hello. And then we can pass in, just say Billy and more. And then we can console.log that. If we save it, you see over here we get well, hello, Billy Moore. So you could pass in numbers, you could pass in Boolean, strings, whatever, into a function and be good to go. So now let's take a look at another type of function, and let's look at a function expression. You can assign an anonymous function to a variable. And what anonymous means is just that there's not a name to go with the function. So let's go ahead and create one now. And we'll say let say greeting equals, and we're just going to do function with the parentheses here. And then we'll return, well, hello there. Now, what differs between this function and the ones we've been looking at is this right here is a named function. So we specify the function keyword, and then we actually give the function a name. If you look at the function here, it looks different because we've just got the function keyword and then a set of parentheses. There's no name that goes with this function. Now, once we create the function here, we turn around and assign it to this variable, say greeting. And then we can call that variable actually, we need to console.log it. so we can actually see it. So we console.log, and then we call say greeting here. We get, well, hello there. Now, one difference between function expressions and named functions is like up here how we called these functions before we actually declared them. Well, if we copy this line here and then comment it out, and we try to call this function before it's declared, you see here we get an error that say greeting is not defined. So function expressions are not hoisted to the top. So they have to be declared before you can use them. So here we've got this line, we could comment that out, uncomment this, and now it works because we declare it and then we call it. Okay, moving on. Let's take a look at something called an IFI. An IFI is an immediately invoked function expression. Now let's go ahead and take a look at an example here. So we're going to do a function expression. So we'll say let say greeting to equals, and then we're going to go ahead and declare our function, and we'll pass in a first name and a last name. And then we'll go ahead and we'll return a template string. Actually, with this one, let's go ahead and leave the parameters out of there. And we'll just say, hi, how are you? All right. Now, to turn this into an IFI, what we need to do is we need to surround this function in parentheses. So we're going to put a parenthesis there. We're going to come down here and put a parenthesis. But we also need to put an open and closing parenthesis here, and then close it off with a semicolon. Now what we did is we just created this function expression and immediately called it. So like up here where we called say greeting and we had to put the parentheses here with an immediately invoked function expression, all you've got to do is just declare the variable and it executes immediately. So we could just say console.log say greeting to. No parentheses after it or anything. Close that off, hit save, and you see we get hi, how are you? Now the same thing with parameters, and we'll just go ahead and put our function in here, and then we'll come down here and we'll invoke it, and right here we'll just return. Actually, let's go ahead and put our parameters here. And we'll return a template string. And now if we do console.log say greeting 3, so you can see here we called say greeting 3, and over here in the console we got, well, hello there, undefined. Well, now that we've got parameters that we're passing into this function, this IFI, we've got to pass those values in. Now up here when we passed the value in, we did it right here. Well, we got to do the same thing on this immediately invoked function expression. And the way we do it is we put them inside our parentheses here. So if we paste that in there and save it, you'll see here we get, well, hello there, Billy Moore. And that's exactly what we're looking for. So let's move on and talk about some es6 fat arrow functions. So with es6, we've got a new function syntax that we can use, and they're called fat arrow functions. And the reason they're called fat arrow is because they're made up of an equal sign followed by a greater than sign. It looks like a fat arrow. So let's take a look at one of our functions that we've already used up here. Let's just take a look at this. Actually, let's just create a new one. And we'll just say let speak names equal function, and we'll pass in first name and second name. And then we'll just return a template string. The names are first name and second name. Okay. So if we call that, and we'll just console.log this here. If we save it, you see over here, oh, we didn't pass in our variable. Let's say Jack and Jill. We've got to pass in our parameters. So now we get the names are Jack and Jill. With es6, it gives us an alternative to this. If you look here, this function keyword, we use that a lot. And the goal with a lot of the es6 features is to reduce the amount of repetitive typing that may not necessarily be necessary, and to make our syntax a little cleaner. So the first thing we're able to do is we're able to get rid of this function keyword here. So we can get rid of the function keyword. We've still got our parentheses and our parameters here. And then over on the right, we'll put a fat arrow, which is an equal sign greater than sign. Now that's all we've got to do. This is a perfectly valid function right here, identical to the way we had it just before this. And if I go ahead and save, you'll see over here we still get the names are Jack and Jill. Now then, the next thing that fat arrow functions allow us to do is if there is one return statement and only one return statement, we can actually get rid of the code block. So we can get rid of that and we can put the return right after the fat arrow. But we don't even need the return keyword. We can just put our return value right here after the fat arrow. And if I save this, we still get the names are Jack and Jill. Now, if there's multiple statements in the function, then you still need the code block. It's just if there's one single return statement, you don't have to put the return keyword and you don't have to put the curly braces. Now, a little bit on the parameters here. If there is 0 or 2 or more parameters, you have to have the parentheses. If you only have one parameter, then you can even omit the parentheses. So if this function only took one parameter, let's just say first name, we could change this function to look like this. Hit save and you see here the names are Jack. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but you understand what I mean. So now we've shortened this from having that function keyword and all the parentheses and curly braces to now all we have is the parameter, the fat arrow, which denotes the function, and then our single return statement right here. So it's pretty cool. I'll use es6 fat arrow functions quite a bit during the course. Now, one thing to keep in mind about fat arrow functions is that they do not bind this. And this is a keyword. It's a little hard to wrap your head around. I'm going to pull up my browser here. And you can see that this keyword, in JavaScript, the thing called this is the object that owns the JavaScript code. So if it's used in a function, it refers to the object that owns the function. When this is used in an object, it is referring to the object itself. And note here that it is not a variable, it's a keyword, and you can't change the value of it. We'll talk a little bit more about this later on when we cover objects in the next lesson. So just for now, just know that the difference between a regular function and a fat arrow function is that a regular function binds this and a fat arrow function does not. So just remember that when we get into this discussion. So anyway, let's jump on over to the next lesson and keep going.